Are you feeling overwhelmed by the work that's required when you're involved in children's ministry? Are there so many kids that are coming, which is what we really pray for, isn't it? Because the kids are excited, they're bringing their friends, and maybe they're even bringing their parents. But there's so much to do, and you're feeling so overwhelmed, you're almost burnt out, and yet you know that you should be excited about serving these kids. Let's explore that today here on Kid Story Quick Tips. I want to start today's session with a testimony from a good friend of mine named Pastor Moses. Pastor Moses is a refugee from South Sudan and living in northern Uganda, and just leading a great charge there in Kid Story and reaching kids and communities for Christ. When Moses first came to a Kid Story workshop, I could see it in his face in that first story about Jesus blessing the children. You could see it in his eyes. You could see it in his expression. He knew that the one thing that he needed to do was to go back home and tell Bible stories to the kids. A couple of months later, I get this message from Pastor Moses. And he says, "Gary, you got to help me." He says, "I've got 200 kids that are coming. What do I do?" And I said, "Moses, you need to find other people to help you. Maybe there's some youth that you can use their gifts and their talents, their abilities. Maybe there are some other adults. Maybe there's some actually other pastors and other leaders that are there in those communities that can come and help you. Find some, train them, raise them up, and utilize them in your clubs." A couple of months later, he calls me back. He says, "Pastor Gary," he says, "you got to help me." And I said, "Moses, what's going on?" He says, "I've got 500 kids and 200 parents because the kids are now bringing their parents. They want to hear the stories for themselves. What do I do?" And I said, "Moses, you need to find other people. You need to break that down into smaller groups and be able to have those kids be able to do the retells and the questions in smaller groups. Find other people that can do that part. And maybe you can find people that can tell the stories in smaller groups throughout those communities that you're visiting." And that became the solution for Moses and for many of us involved in children's ministries to not get overwhelmed and not to get burnt out in trying to reach and disciple these children. That's one of the beautiful things that I find about Kid Story is that there are so many places for people to fit in that they can just take a part of it. They don't have to do the whole thing. They can maybe just be a greeter. Maybe they like drama and they want to do the story. They want to be able to learn the story and just tell the story. They're not good in that small group interaction, but they love to do the drama part. They want to be able to be the storyteller. Maybe you have some that they enjoy soccer, football in some of your countries, and maybe they could be devising and leading the retell activities during each of the sessions. And then you have some of those people that, you know what, they just love being with the kids. And they love interacting and hearing their stories and praying with them. Those could be your small group leaders. You have all these different places where people can fit in and utilize the gifts and the talents and the passions that God has given them in order to lead these clubs. You don't have to do it all alone. Don't do it all by yourself. Pray for the Lord to raise up those people, to encourage you and to give you names and to give conversations where you can be finding these people that can come alongside and be a part of the ministry to these children. That's the beauty of it. I mean, throughout the scriptures, we see where God never had people doing things on their own. He sent the disciples, Jesus sent the disciples out 2 by 2. David had his 30 mighty men. Even Moses in the Bible, his father-in-law was telling him, "Moses, you're way too busy. You need to break this down and have other leaders be able to take over some of those responsibilities. And you take on the major ones and you hear the major trials, but leave the other ones for others to take care of." Why not follow the example that's laid out through the scriptures that God has given us. And in fact, that Jesus himself, he had his 12 that did his work. He had his 3 that were closest to him. And then he sent them out in pairs. Everybody always having somebody else to lean on, to encourage, to inspire, so that nobody had to do it all. Nobody was overwhelmed. Nobody was burning out. Well, I'd like to close today's session with a scripture from 1 Peter 4:10. And it says, God has given each of us a gift from his great variety of spiritual gifts. Use them well to serve one another. Find those people that have those gifts, the variety of them, and draw them into the ministry and see what God will do. God bless you. Thanks for being here on Kid Story Quick Tips.